This weekend, I helped an older person change his password, and it took nearly half an hour, and it was agonizing, and now I understand some of the problems. I'm going to walk you through how I showed this person how to pick a password. Actually, several passwords. They are all built to the same design, but they're all different. But part of this you can write down. Our passwords are all going to look like this. They're going to start with a 4-letter code that you will remember that will be based on the site you're going to. Then you're going to throw in a symbol. Then you're going to have a phrase in the middle. At the end of that, you'll have another symbol, maybe a couple of digits. You can write all of this on a piece of paper. I wouldn't leave it lying around, but you can write it all down. The code, the symbols. What you aren't going to write down is the phrase. What you're going to write down is one word that is a hint for you of what the phrase is. First phrase. Can you remember something that you listened to on the radio when you were really small and you can still remember it word for word? If somebody just gives you the first word of this little segment of a radio show, what I'm going to go with is something that I can remember is mildly amusing. But when I was 5 years old, this was the funniest thing in the entire world to me, and I had fits of giggles. This is the sentence.
You would never think, to hear him talk, that Mr. Smith had a wooden leg.
I still have that sentence memorized word for word. I start saying it to myself in my head, and I start writing the first letter of each word in the phrase as I say it. You would never think to hear him talk that Mr. Smith had a wooden leg. You would never think to hear him talk that Mr. Smith had a wooden leg. Mr. Smith, we're going to make those capital letters, and I'm going to begin the sentence with a capital letter. That's my phrase. I'm not going to write it down anywhere, but I am going to write down, I'm going to call this would. And that's going to be my code for typing in that phrase. I'm not going to forget the phrase. I just need the reminder word would. Now I'm going to walk you through how to fit that phrase would into the whole password. Let's say we're going to do a password for Amazon. Amazon.com, we're going to pick a 4-letter code for Amazon. How about AMAZ? Capital A. Small M-A-Z. Now a symbol. Kind of any symbol, and you can write all this down because you're not going to write down the phrase. You're just going to write down the word would, and no one will know what the phrase is. So, fine, we'll use a dollar symbol. That's above the 4. Now here's our code to ourselves. That's where you insert that sentence would. Let's say an @ symbol there, and a couple of digits. Sure, @ sign and then 37. When we get around to typing this, we're actually going to type, you're going to see it's going to be a very long password. AMAZ, dollar symbol. Now, we don't actually type those square brackets. That's a symbol to you. That means you insert your whole phrase in here. Would, was. You would never think to hear him talk that Mr. Smith had a wooden leg. Then the @ sign, then the 37. Now, that whole thing at the bottom, that's the password you don't want to leave lying around. So I suggest you can certainly keep the top half, keep that in your wallet. The bottom half you need to throw away, or, well, if you're like me and you're worried that one day you're going to wake up and have a complete blank on what that is, then fine. Let's put that in a extra secret place someplace else. So we're going to separate these two, and we're going to put the password written out longhand somewhere very, very safe where no one's going to mess with it. And if you're me, you stick it underneath the guard snake. And she's very obliging about that kind of stuff. See? Here's my password. Capital A, M-A-Z, $, would. Okay. You would. Capital Y, would never think to hear him talk that. Capital M, capital S. Smith had a wooden leg. @ 37. There. Done. Now we're going to think up a whole second phrase, and this time I want you to think about when you were a mopey, maudlin, moody, hormonal teenager and lying at home in the hammock or on your bed and feeling sorry for yourself. Back in the 80s, South Africa was in the midst of John Travolta in Greece, and meantime I was moping over a Bee Gees song called First of May, which was very unhip. Same thing as before, memorize some words, say them out loud, and start writing out the initial letters. The apple tree that grew for you and me. Oh, yeah, you know what? Let's make that a 4 instead of a F. And we can make the and into an and sign. Then we've got our symbol already. I watch the apples falling digit one by one. And then we've got our symbols. I'm going to call this apple. That'll be my hint. Okay, let's say we're going to make a password for logging into Google. Google, let's call it Goog. Let's do a % as the symbol, and then our phrase, which will be apple. Another symbol at the end. We're not going to bother with digits because we already have them inside apple. Okay, capital G, O-O-G, %. And now our phrase, apple. The apple tree that grew for you and me. Capital I, watch the apples falling one by one. And the % sign at the end. Okay, one more. For Yahoo, we're going to use would, that same phrase we used before. Okay, 4-letter code, Y-A-H-O, a symbol, a hash sign, sure. Then this time would, another symbol, and digits. Capital Y-A-H-O, £, and then David Frost.
You would never think, to hear him talk, that Mr. Smith had a wooden leg.
Less a wooden leg, $, 98, and that is it for your. Now you've got a basis for doing lots of passwords. Sorry, while I kiss the snake, and you can continue to put these together. You have 2 phrases now that you can use, wood and apple, that you're going to make up your own, and you can use those, and you can keep writing down these passwords. You just never write down those phrases, and you can make up more phrases as you need them.